Last week, we learned that the DNC made a slight alteration to their platform on climate. They got rid of an amendment banning fossil fuel subsidies. Here with us to talk about that is the author of that actual amendment. He's going to talk about how the DNC removed his language without his consent before formally adopting the 2020 party platform. What does this mean for the future of climate policy? John Lash is here with us, the union carpenter who's been active in labor and environmental politics since 2004. He served as a military intelligence analyst in the Middle East, which led him to run for U.S. Congress. I'm sorry, I'm hearing a little bit of an echo from me. Hopefully we can fix it in a quick second. Which you narrowly, John, lost by 300 votes, meaning voting counts. He worked for Bernie Sanders in 2016 and became a DNC platform committee member this year in 2020. John, thanks for joining us on the program today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Your proposed amendment to the DNC platform, can you start by telling us about your amendment and what was the purpose of it?
Okay, so the original amendment was actually a little more detailed than the amendment that's been pushed out into the press. In 20, I read that when I became on the platform committee, I read the 2016 Democratic platform, and I was looking at what is in there for climate. I'm a climate activist, a green builder, somebody who cares about the environment and sees this as probably the most important crisis facing our nation and the globe. So I noticed there was no language about fossil fuel subsidies, and I worked with someone by the name of Julianna to come up with amendment that changed that, adopting some of the old language from 2016, but also inserting new language that says we're not going to subsidize carbon capture and storage, direct air capture, and enhanced oil recovery, so these three things sort of encapsulate what the fossil fuel companies are now pushing as their solution to the climate crisis. So we worked in it, and there was actually 4 amendments that were dropped without consent.
So if someone is just stepping into trying to understand this, the fossil fuel companies are being subsidized to do their version of environmental cleanup?
Well, correct. What they want to do is they've made a lot of investments in pipelines and infrastructure and oil refineries, drilling, etc. And now they want to ask the taxpayers to help subsidize that, and they're calling it the solution to the climate crisis. When they drill for oil, about 25% of the oil is left in the ground, and they've perfected over the last 30 years a process called enhanced oil recovery, and that is using a chemical process to push the dirtiest oil out of the ground and then burn it. And so
then the chemicals kind of get left in there, so that's not so great either.
Well, what they're saying is now is, there's this carbon's a problem. Let's capture the carbon off a smokestack, maybe 300 miles away. Let's mix it with water and use that to push the oil out, and that'll trap and store the carbon underground. So this is what carbon capture and storage, also referenced as CCS, is. But for the last 30 years, they've been saying that the climate crisis is a hoax. They've been putting pseudoscience out there, and they've been misleading the American public on this issue. And now what they're doing is saying, oh, wait, it is an issue, and here's our solution to the issue.
Is their solution an actual solution? Would it do any percentage of good?
The best, most aggressive, real, concrete, and workable solution is the Green New Deal that I see out there.
Sure.
Something that gives homeowners and taxpayers incentives to make their homes energy efficient, buy electric vehicles, to electrify America, to get us off of our dependence on fossil fuels. And this would save us an astronomical amount of money. But instead of giving homeowners some of their taxpayer money back to do the right thing, what they're doing is reaching into your pocket and giving that money to the fossil fuel companies to build these pipelines, to push, to experiment with the technology that would capture the carbon off of smokestacks, etc.
John, I knew it. I knew when BP and these other guys started being like, hey, we care about this duck that we killed all of its family with our oil spills. We're starting to get it. I knew that it was some bullshit. And now you're telling me exactly what the bullshit is, that they really want this so they can continue to drill and say, but we're cleaning it. Even if it might be good, you know, the idea here is we really need to leave these oils and fossil fuels in the ground and transition to a clean, green energy economy. Did I get that?
That's the easy solution that I'm pushing for.
So why is your amendment, what was your amendment? And talk about how it would, why it is important to the Democratic Party platform, and then how it got pushed out. Give us a bird's eye view here.
I'm just going to try and, gloss over it with, give you some of the, not go into the weeds too much, but basically there were several conversations back and forth between myself and the Sanders campaign. I never talked to the Biden campaign directly. It was always through the Sanders. And at first I loved the amendment and said there's none others like it. So just submit it myself. I did. And
you were basically saying, no, we're not giving subsidies for this carbon capture and storage baloney.
Correct. Okay. Yes. And there was 3 other amendments that stripped that language out. So, I mean, I recognize the language that the Carbon Capture Coalition has been at this for decades. If you go Google them, you'll see all kinds of glossy videos, scientists all advocating for this form or solution to the climate crisis. In reality, they haven't got it to work yet. There's a plant in Petronova that's sort of their poster child, but it, after being online for 3 years, was barely able to function, and they've taken it offline. So it doesn't work, is the bottom line. Anyway,
it doesn't work. So
it doesn't work. It just went offline like 2 weeks ago. So they've experimented with it. I mean, and this just underscores the insanity of what they're trying to do. But I did try to strip all that language out, working with June Sequeira, who's more of a subject matter expert than I am on the technical side of enhanced oil recovery and CCS. She follows every report, every news report, all the stock fluctuations, which companies are doing, making investments in CCS, et cetera.
Can I see the cartoon that you sent me?
Sure.
Is this a good time for that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
If you've got the graphic.
Who doesn't love a big cartoon that explains exactly what's going on?
Right. So that's it.
One of my favorites.
This is the legislation that they're talking about, the Use It Act, HR 1166 and Senate Bill 383. And it's basically a $50 million bailout for fossil fuel companies to build all these pipelines, to build the infrastructure necessary to capture the carbon and push it underground and use it to push more oil out of the ground. So June Sequeira's research, and a lot of research, shows that this is actually going to pump more CO2 into the air and not take it out of the air. And the language in the DNC platform is all, well, carbon neutral processes, carbon neutral economy. We're at 441 parts per million. We need to get down to 350 parts per million. And
I remember back when it was before that. It wasn't that long ago. We're like skyrocketing here into disaster. Yeah.
So this is the process, and this is what the amendments were aimed to do. And after several conversations back and forth with the Sanders people, I refused to drop my amendment. And that's all the amendments. And there was various threats. Well, then we're gonna have to drop all your amendments, because I had 9 climate amendments. And they didn't really want to do that. And then the final call came the day of the platform meeting, and they were saying, well, look, we'll give you 2 to 3 minutes to talk about your issue, but there won't be a vote on the issue. And I said, no, I want to vote. I want to talk about the issue, and I want there to be a formal discussion on it, and I want the amendment included. So that's where we left things. The Sanders person at 10:45 said I had till 10:45 to change my mind and give them a call. I didn't. When the meeting commenced, I didn't see my amendments. I wrote up a blog summary at Down with Tyranny about the whole process, what my amendments were, and my reflections on being a platform committee member. And then somewhere between that period where the Democratic Party platform met and adopted these resolutions, and the actual convention, they even took the watered down language and removed that. Now, I don't know what happened between then and there, but at some point they started saying that I removed the amendment and didn't want it in there, and that's just not true.
So, but there were supposed to be some rules here, right? So they basically broke the rules. Your amendment, you understand this correctly, you needed to agree to remove the languaging in order for it to be valid.
Correct. As the author of the amendment, I would have had to have dropped it. And there's a lot of these conversations happen over the phone. In fact, I read a reporter I talked to had apparently talked to Jeff Weaver, and Jeff Weaver said he talked to me, and I agree. I've never talked to Jeff Weaver. So the rules require that we drop it. The rules were broken. And I mean, I guess that's just how the DNC functions. They are going to do what they want to do.
Is this in a post-Trump world? Has the DNC always been sort of above the rules? Trump seems to be saying, "Oh, following rules? We don't need to follow any rules. Why would we follow rules? Democracy isn't a thing." I mean, is this normal for the DNC, or are we in uncharted territory here?
I don't know. It's hard for me to say what's normal for the DNC or not normal for the DNC. I think if you're going to set up a set of rules, you should at least follow them. And really what we're missing in this whole thing is some sort of dialogue and discussion. Wouldn't it have been great if we had made a first, a second, had a discussion, they brought out their side and I brought out my side, and we had talked about it and maybe even compromised and reached some agreeable language to where I had a chance to better inform platform members. But that wasn't what happened.
And what do you think this is indicative of our hopefully incoming administration? God, this is such a difficult emotional thing. You're like, I really want him to win, but I don't like what he's doing already.
Yeah.
It's rough.
It puts our focus elsewhere. So the good thing is I think America recognizes that there's a Trump wreck. And I guess we're going to get Joe Biden, and I think we need to focus our energies on electing a new Congress that gets it, that's going to fight for what's right. I'm very encouraged by Cori Bush's win. Here in the 11th Congressional District, we had a very strong environmentalist, progressive activist running on the Green New Deal, and I think she's going to run a second time. And I think that's the key, is getting a new Congress and a new Senate in there.
I have no idea what Joe Biden may or may not do. I mean, I feel like there are things that you have to do in order to win an election. And I wonder how beholden he's going to be to all the different things he's promising or not promising, for good or bad. I'm not sure how to read this one.
For progressives and populists, this should be a huge concern, what we're seeing, right? I mean, not only did they back away from this language, right?
Which was similar to what appeared in 2016. So they're backing away from
right. Is that they're backing away from healthcare and their commitment to the public option too. So I mean, we saw they're moving to the right. They're trying to court Republican voters, and what I think is happening is a political realignment. Where there's really only one party. It's a corporate party with a Democratic wing and a Republican wing. And I think the voters are different, but our elected leaders, or in this case, nominated leaders, are gravitating towards business as usual. And I think Americans are ready for something fundamentally different. We're just going to have to give them that fundamentally different in Congress and the Senate.
I'm tying some ends together here as I'm looking at different stories. 50% of Trump's current budget goes toward military spending. And the military, let's just say they're not going solar anytime soon. Mm-hmm. Do you believe the refusal to cut oil subsidies and to cut back on processing it, bringing it out of the ground, has to do with military policy and the need for cheap oil to kind of keep our policy of empire going?
So I served in the Middle East as an intelligence analyst and used to brief military generals, and we briefed on the importance of keeping the Strait of Hormuz open. As very matter of fact, 75% of the world's oil flows through the Straits of Hormuz. That is why the U.S. military is here. This influenced my thinking as a individual and human being dramatically. So do I think that oil companies want the military protecting their oil supply? The answer is yes. The military itself acknowledges the climate crisis and has a plan to move away from fossil fuels. So the military is going green in some instances. And a lot of, it's true. And they must be listening to subject matter experts. But
that's refreshing.
But it's the right. So I mean, it's the policy makers that are the issue. I think, and that's where we need to focus our attention.
We're speaking with John Lash. He's a DNC 2020 Platform Committee member. What do you make of, how can our listeners take action to oppose EOR and the fossil fuel industry in spite of the DNC?
I want to throw one thing back at you. We did a back of the envelope math, right? To take $5 trillion that we've spent on the Iraq war and the Afghanistan war over the last decade. For that amount of money, you could buy every American driver a Tesla. So, right, it's a question of priorities. We have the money. It's a question of priorities. I want to put that thought out there to connect the dots between military spending and fixing the climate crisis. There's a lot of things you can do. I mentioned running for office. I am running for mayor here in Aurora with the hope that we can implement some exciting new changes to make Aurora one of the greenest cities in the United States, get us off the grid.
Aurora, Colorado? Where are you?
Aurora, Illinois.
Oh, Illinois. Yes. Right.
And also the city of lights, where the street light was invented and put out first. Yeah.
Fabulous.
So Justice Democrats just came out with a petition the other day to push Joe Biden not to hire oil executives in his administration. Wouldn't it be great if they had people like me, people like June, people like R.L. Miller, Michelle Dietrich, some of the climate activists who know policy and know what needs to get done? Wouldn't it be great if we had those people instead of oil executives in a Biden administration? People can call.
But also great.
Right. Well, you go to Justice Democrats' website, sign their petition. You can ask your senator and congressman to oppose the Use It Act. It's HR 1166 and Senate Bill 383. And if they say, no, we're going to sign on to the Use It Act, which a number of Republicans and Democrats have signed on to, run for Congress, support somebody who is running for Congress, become engaged in the political process. Democracy is not a spectator sport. And things aren't going to change unless we get more people involved, more people informed, and continue to advocate for the things that we believe in.
Thank you so much, John. John Lash is a union carpenter who's been active in labor and environmental politics since 2004. He served as a military intelligence analyst in the Middle East, which led him to run for Congress on the anti-war and pro-environment platform, which he narrowly lost. Narrowly, which I think is good. Not that you lost, but you know that the margin was small. 300 votes. Oh, that happened in 2008. I hope you will run again. John worked for Bernie Sanders in 2016 and became a DNC Platform Committee member in 2020. John, any final thoughts on the rest of the Biden's platform when it comes to the environment?
Here's a message to Joe Biden, right? In 2016, the Democratic platform, we stood there and said, to beat Donald Trump, Hillary needs to be adamantly against the TPP. Sanders platform members said this out loud. They pushed to remove or to say, and we oppose the TPP, 5 words into the Democratic platform, and they fought it every step of the way. We were saying,
and then Trump was like, I'm going to stop the TPP. And everyone was like, hooray, my hero.
Hillary Clinton, we showed you the path towards the finish line and the victory line, and you ignored it. So I feel like we're saying to Joe Biden, you're in a pandemic, Medicare for all. This is the solution. Here's the finish line. Here's how you win. And there's constant resistance. And I have great fear that they are not going to take the easy path towards victory. Mm-hmm. But he's got, 70 some days, and hopefully Donald Trump's on his way out. And the clip you just ran from The Daily Show epitomizes where we are at as a nation. It's pretty sad. It's a low bar.
As an activist, do you believe you will be able to get more done in a Biden administration?
Trump is very chaotic and unpredictable. And sometimes narcissists can be more easily manipulated than fought. I think it's going to be, I think the Democrats are more hell-bent on fighting than manipulating. But I think that, we're definitely going to need to push Joe Biden a lot. So anyway, it's hard to say. Donald Trump is pure chaos. There's no question about it.
John Lash, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. I appreciate the work that you're doing and continue to do to make a better world. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having us on.